3 years ago, and occasionally since, there have been whispers surrounding Clint Eastwood and the mysterious, almost mythical car that has sat motionless in his garage. A Shelby Cobra, rare, beautiful, and fiercely powerful, has been languishing under his care for 58 days shy of half a year, with an estimated value of $4.5 million. Yet, despite the countless offers and persistent attention from luxury car enthusiasts and collectors, Eastwood refuses to sell. The reason why, once known, leaves many stunned. In 1965, Eastwood bought the Cobra from none other than Carroll Shelby himself, the famed automotive designer and racer, for a modest sum of $7,500, a fortune at the time but mere pennies compared to the car's current worth. When the car was later restored, a mechanic unearthed remnants of Shelby's cigarettes and personal notes hidden beneath the seats and tucked under the hood, almost like buried treasures. These artifacts transformed the vehicle from mere machine into a time capsule, a living relic of automotive history. Clint Eastwood's emotional attachment to the Cobra isn't just about the car. It's about memory, identity, and the passage of time. Much like his own journey through life, the car has aged with dignity and mystique. Born in San Francisco on May 31, 1930, Eastwood entered the world with force, literally. He weighed a staggering 11 pounds 6 ounces, making him the heaviest baby ever delivered at St. Francis Hospital. The astonished medical staff jokingly nicknamed him Samson after the biblical strongman, and the tale was sensational enough to be picked up by a local newspaper. Ironically, that tiny blurb became his first brush with fame, though he had no idea it was only the beginning. Raised by Ruth and Clinton Eastwood, working-class Californians who struggled to make ends meet during the Great Depression, Clint's early years were marked by instability and frequent moves. His father worked as a steelworker and later as a salesman, while his mother found work in factories. Despite the economic hardship, Clint's upbringing was not devoid of small luxuries. By 1940, the family had moved to Piedmont, an affluent suburb near Oakland, where they enjoyed privileges like country club memberships and multiple family vehicles. However, Clint remained grounded. Though he showed an interest in music and had vague thoughts about attending college, his academic struggles ruled that out. Instead, he took on various grueling physical jobs, which toughened him up and instilled a strong work ethic. Everything changed when he was drafted into the U.S. Army during the Korean War. Stationed at Fort Ord, Eastwood served as a lifeguard, an assignment that, according to some rumors, may have been influenced by his connection with the daughter of a senior officer. Whether true or not, Clint managed to avoid frontline combat. Still, his time in the military wasn't without peril. In one harrowing incident, he was aboard a Douglas AD bomber that ran out of fuel and crash-landed off the coast of Point Reyes. He swam 2 miles through frigid Pacific waters to safety, an act of survival that foreshadowed the grit and tenacity he'd later bring to his roles on screen. Discharged in March 1953, he returned to civilian life with a renewed sense of purpose, and quickly found himself on a path toward Hollywood, almost by fate. A chance meeting led to a CBS press opportunity, setting in motion the long and storied career of one of America's most iconic actors. Rawhide's later success wasn't as straightforward as it might seem from the outside. According to one account, a Universal International film crew working at Fort Ord noticed Clint Eastwood's imposing figure and classic looks, which led to an invitation to meet with a director. But this origin story is disputed. Patrick McGilligan's unofficial biography, along with even Eastwood's official accounts, suggests that Chuck Hill, an associate with ties to Hollywood, played a more pivotal role. Hill had been stationed at Fort Ord as well and reconnected with Eastwood in Los Angeles, where he helped navigate him into industry circles. This connection led to a meeting with Irving Glassberg, a Universal Studios cameraman, and ultimately a tryout arranged with director Arthur Lubin. Standing at 6'4", Eastwood had undeniable screen presence, but Lubin found his acting raw and awkward. He lacked training and appeared uncomfortable on camera, unsure of where to stand or how to deliver lines. Still, there was something about him, an intensity perhaps, that prompted Lubin to recommend acting classes. Eastwood took the advice seriously and began studying, eventually securing a contract in April 1954 for $100 a week. It was a modest start, but the deal planted his foot firmly in the door. His early career was a series of small, forgettable roles. He auditioned for Six Bridges to Cross in May 1954, but the director turned him down. However, producer Joseph P. persisted, and Jack Arnold gave Eastwood his first real break with a minor part in Revenge of the Creature in 1955. The role wasn't significant, but it led to another blink-and-you'll-miss-it appearance in Tarantula. His big moment came, or so he thought, when he starred in Ambush at Cimarron Pass in 1958, a low-budget Western he would later call the worst ever made. The film, centered on soldiers surviving a staged ambush, was panned by critics for its wooden dialogue and formulaic plot. Eastwood, deeply disillusioned, confessed to his wife that he felt embarrassed by the project and even considered quitting acting altogether to return to school or pursue a new career. But fate wasn't finished with him. In the summer of 1958, CBS offered Eastwood the role of Rowdy Yates in Rawhide, a Western TV series chronicling the lives of a cattle drive crew. Filming began in Arizona, and when the show premiered in early 1959, it skyrocketed to popularity, reaching the top of the ratings within just 3 weeks. For the first time, Eastwood enjoyed national recognition and job security. He earned $750 per episode, a significant leap from his earlier earnings. However, the success came at a cost. The demanding shooting schedule, 6 days a week with 12-hour days, left him exhausted. Despite this, Rawhide was an invaluable platform. It introduced him to millions and gave him a chance to refine his craft. Still, Eastwood was increasingly frustrated with the simplistic writing of his character, Rowdy Yates. Yates was depicted as impulsive and somewhat dim-witted, which clashed with Eastwood's evolving vision of himself as a more complex actor. He famously referred to Yates as the idiot of the plains, a comment that underscored his dissatisfaction. By 1965, the show's ratings began to slip, and CBS started considering alternatives, signaling the end of an era for Eastwood, but also the beginning of something even greater. The cancellation of Rawhide in 1965 could have spelled the end for many actors, but for Clint Eastwood, it became the turning point he had long awaited. Frustrated with the limitations of television and the lack of serious film opportunities in Hollywood, Eastwood was ready to take a risk. That risk came in the form of a bold collaboration with Italian director Sergio Leone, who was searching for a lead actor for a low-budget Western titled A Fistful of Dollars. Leone had already approached and been turned down by Hollywood icons like Charles Bronson and Henry Fonda. He wanted someone with a quiet intensity, an actor who could command the screen with minimal dialogue. Eastwood, with his stoic demeanor and enigmatic presence, was a perfect fit. When Eastwood read the script, he was struck by how different it felt from the polished, morally upright Westerns that Hollywood had been producing for years. Leone's vision was darker and more morally ambiguous, portraying a world where heroes were flawed and violence came swiftly and brutally. The film, shot in Spain on a shoestring budget of around $200,000, was loosely based on Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo. Instead of a wandering samurai, the story followed a mysterious gunslinger who manipulates two rival gangs in a small town for his own benefit. Eastwood's character, famously unnamed and later referred to as the man with no name, became instantly iconic, cloaked in a poncho, chewing on a cigarillo, and speaking with his actions rather than his words. Released in 1964 in Italy, A Fistful of Dollars became a surprise international sensation, grossing $145 million worldwide. It not only launched Eastwood into global stardom, but also sparked a whole new subgenre, the spaghetti western. These films were grittier, bloodier, and more cynical than their American counterparts, and audiences couldn't get enough. Eastwood quickly reprised his role in For a Few Dollars More in 1965, this time sharing the screen with Lee Van Cleef, who played Colonel Mortimer, a bounty hunter driven by vengeance. The film expanded on the world Leone had begun creating, with a more layered plot, heightened tension, and Eastwood's character evolving into a more confident and hardened figure. Then came the grand finale in 1966, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It was the most ambitious of the trilogy, bringing together Eastwood as Blondie, the good, Eli Wallach as Tuco, the ugly, and Lee Van Cleef as Angel Eyes, the bad. The film revolved around a chaotic hunt for buried gold during the American Civil War, with Leone's direction growing even more ambitious and stylistic. The score by Ennio Morricone added a haunting layer to the film's already epic tone, culminating in the legendary three-way standoff in a sprawling cemetery, a scene that has become one of the most iconic in cinematic history. While the characters had minimal dialogue, their presence and the tension they created spoke volumes. Eastwood's fame soared, but his working relationship with Leone wasn't always smooth. Leone's meticulous nature often led to long, drawn-out shoots, which tested Eastwood's patience. The language barrier was another obstacle. Leone directed in Italian, forcing Eastwood to rely on translators. Still, despite the frustrations, their creative chemistry was undeniable. Their collaboration elevated both of their careers and redefined the Western genre forever. At a time when John Wayne's brand of Westerns still dominated, showcasing noble cowboys fighting for justice and American ideals, Eastwood and Leone were rewriting the rules. Their films offered a more realistic and morally complex view of the West, one filled with anti-heroes, greed, and survival. For Eastwood, it marked the end of his television career and the beginning of his reign as a cinematic legend. With Clint Eastwood's films, the traditional moral code of the Western was turned on its head. His characters lived by a code of survival, not chivalry, something that infuriated John Wayne, who had long been the symbol of the noble American cowboy. The contrast between them reached a boiling point with the release of High Plains Drifter, in 1973, a grim, violent Western with supernatural undertones. Eastwood directed and starred in the film, portraying a mysterious stranger who avenges a town's dark past. Wayne was so disturbed by its tone that he wrote Eastwood a letter, condemning the film as too brutal, too cynical, and entirely unrepresentative of what Westerns were supposed to be. He even declined an invitation to collaborate with Eastwood on The Hostiles, a project that ultimately went unproduced due to their fundamental differences in vision. Wayne's idea of honor included a strict rule. His characters never shot an enemy in the back. Eastwood's characters, by contrast, did whatever was necessary to win, and that divergence in philosophy captured the evolution of the Western itself. Eastwood's transformation into a Hollywood icon solidified in 1971 with Dirty Harry, a film that redefined the cop genre. At a time of rising crime and public mistrust in authority, Eastwood's character, Harry Callahan, embodied the gritty, no-nonsense vigilante the public seemed to crave. He ignored bureaucratic red tape and wasn't afraid to bend the law to catch criminals. Directed by Don Siegel, the film was inspired by the real-life Zodiac killings, and Eastwood's portrayal of the steely, relentless detective struck a chord. The film's most famous line, "You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?" became a defining moment in cinematic history. Dirty Harry was both celebrated and controversial, drawing criticism from those who felt it endorsed police brutality, even as it became a massive box office success, grossing over $36 million worldwide. Eastwood continued to dominate the screen with roles that blended grit and complexity. In Sudden Impact, 1983, he delivered another iconic line, "Go ahead, make my day." The phrase became more than just a movie quote. It permeated American culture, even being used by President Ronald Reagan in 1985 to threaten a tax hike veto. Eastwood had become more than just an actor. He was a cultural force whose influence transcended film, but Eastwood wasn't content to remain in front of the camera. He expanded his creative influence by directing and producing, beginning with High Plains Drifter and continuing with The Outlaw Josie Wales, 1976, where he played a Missouri farmer turned Avenger after his family was slaughtered by Union soldiers during the Civil War. That film was a critical and commercial hit, grossing $31 million on a $3 million budget. Its lasting impact was recognized in 1996 when the Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry for its cultural and historical significance. In 1979, Eastwood once again teamed with Don Siegel for Escape from Alcatraz, a suspenseful thriller based on the true story of Frank Morris and his infamous prison break from the maximum security island. The film earned $43 million and remains one of the most compelling prison escape narratives ever filmed. Even decades later, Eastwood continued challenging audiences. In 2008, he starred in and directed Gran Torino, playing Walt Kowalski, a bitter Korean War veteran who gradually forms an unexpected friendship with a Hmong teenager. The film explored themes of redemption and intergenerational conflict, though it sparked debate over its use of racial slurs. Some critics argued it reinforced stereotypes, while others saw it as an honest reflection of a man confronting his own prejudices. Regardless of the controversy, Gran Torino was a global success, earning $269 million on a $33 million budget, proving that Eastwood's storytelling still resonated. He didn't just adapt to changing times, he shaped them. His directorial career became as celebrated as his acting, culminating in Oscar-winning films like Unforgiven, 1992, which dismantled the romantic myths of the Old West. In it, Eastwood portrayed William Money, a retired outlaw pulled back into violence. The film was a powerful meditation on justice, vengeance, and the moral cost of killing. Eastwood's refusal to glamorize violence while still portraying its harsh realities underscored his unique voice in cinema, a voice that, even in its quietest moments, demanded to be heard. Clint Eastwood's fascination with cars wasn't just a passing teenage phase, it was a defining trait of his youth that underscored his fiercely independent spirit. By the time he was 15, Eastwood had already developed a deep bond with the open road, taking solo road trips throughout California. These drives weren't just about movement, they were about escape, reflection, and the sense of freedom that would later become thematic in many of his films. He was the kind of teenager who preferred greasy engines over crowded dance halls, someone who found solace in the hum of a well-tuned motor and the vastness of empty highways. His love for mechanics began in earnest during his time at Oakland Technical High School, where he enrolled in auto shop classes not because they were easy credits, but because he was genuinely curious about how machines worked. He would often stay late after school, tinkering under hoods, testing performance limits, and trying to understand the raw power behind combustion and control. Even after achieving fame, Eastwood never let go of his passion for cars. He maintained a private collection of vintage and high-performance vehicles, and he often did his own maintenance, proudly showing an affinity for models that mirrored his own image: classic, efficient, and rugged. Friends and colleagues noted that Eastwood could often be found in his garage, sleeves rolled up, sleeves smudged with oil, working methodically on an old pickup or sports car. This mechanical expertise mirrored his approach to filmmaking: precise, self-reliant, and always hands-on. He even used his love of cars to bond with his children, teaching some of them how to drive and fix engines, passing down the knowledge and love for the craft. For Eastwood, cars were more than vehicles. They were symbols of autonomy and grit. They weren't just a means of transportation. They were expressions of identity, echoes of the man who always valued the journey as much as the destination. Clint Eastwood's relationship with automobiles is deeply personal, shaped by both necessity and passion. Long before he became a legendary figure in Hollywood, his first vehicle, a 1949 Chevrolet panel truck, represented survival more than luxury. Purchased in 1951 for just $25, it served not only as transportation but as a temporary home while he struggled to find work in Los Angeles. Eastwood, still an unknown actor, parked the truck behind movie theaters and rigged it to function like a minimalist camper. He installed insulating curtains and placed an old mattress in the back to sleep on. The truck, powered by a modest Thriftmaster straight-six engine producing just 90 horsepower, wasn't fast or flashy, but it taught Eastwood invaluable lessons in patience and self-reliance, especially while wrestling with its clunky 3-speed manual transmission. Decades later, that same truck was lovingly restored at a cost of $65,000 and remains part of his collection, not just as a vehicle, but as a powerful reminder of his humble beginnings. As Eastwood's career flourished, so did his appreciation for automotive artistry. His collection reflects a lifetime of taste and experience, showcasing a wide range of vehicles that span generations and genres. Among the standouts is his Ferrari 275 GTB, a masterpiece of Italian engineering with a 3.3-liter V12 engine producing 280 horsepower. The sleek curves and powerful mechanics perfectly matched Eastwood's refined yet rugged aesthetic. But his taste wasn't limited to European elegance. He also treasured American muscle, such as the 1977 Pontiac Trans Am Special Edition, made famous by Smokey and the Bandit. Its screaming chicken decal and Oldsmobile 403 V8 engine brought a boldness that echoed his own on-screen persona. Perhaps the most iconic vehicle in Eastwood's collection is the 1965 Shelby Cobra 427 SC, a machine born from Carroll Shelby's vision and Eastwood's hunger for speed. Bought for $7,500, a significant sum at the time, Eastwood earned a $1,000 discount after impressing Shelby during a test drive. But the discount came with a caveat. Eastwood had to promise to drive it like he stole it. True to his word, he pushed the Cobra to its limits, logging over 50 track days at Willow Springs Raceway. This wasn't a garage queen. It was driven hard and with purpose. The Cobra's 485 horsepower Ford V8 engine, capable of going from 0 to 60 in just 4.3 seconds, made it one of the fastest street-legal vehicles of its time. Only 29 SC models were ever produced, making Eastwood's a rare gem, even without its legendary provenance. What sets his Cobra apart, however, are the hidden details, traces of Shelby's own hand. Mechanics discovered cigarette burns on the passenger seat and Carroll Shelby's handwritten notes beneath it, detailing experimental cam timing adjustments. Shelby's stopwatch, used to time track runs, was also found tucked behind the seat. These artifacts turned the car into a living piece of racing history. Despite offers reaching nearly $5 million, Eastwood refuses to sell. To him, the Cobra isn't just a high-performance machine, it's a symbol of an era when freedom, power, and artistry defined both cars and cinema. It reflects his love for mechanical precision, his rebellious streak, and a time when driving was an experience meant to be felt, not just managed.